What a fun game that was, man. Manchester City, reigning champions 4 times in a row, traveling to Stamford Bridge against Chelsea, who are under their 5th manager in the last 3 years. Enzo Maresca versus Pep. Master versus apprentice. And I can't lie, chat, I'm seeing a lot of discourse on the timeline. I was listening to some Chelsea fans on talk shows after, just kind of trying to grasp the situation at hand. And it's interesting, right? Because I'll be real, I feel like everybody has a different opinion on this. I'm seeing some people say that Chelsea played really well and that it was some unlucky finishing and that they threatened City a lot. I'm seeing some people saying City basically cruised through the game and Chelsea are no different to last year. I feel like with most things, right, chat, I think the truth kind of lies somewhere down the middle. I think Chelsea had moments, especially towards the end of the first half. I think there were times, thanks to in some parts some shambolic goalkeeping from Ederson, right? But I do think Chelsea towards the end of the first half were creating a decent amount. They were on to City. They were pressing them pretty well. Nico Jackson had some nice moments here and there. But I have to be honest with you, right, chat? I think City were pretty comfortable all game. I'm not trying to take too many massive takeaways from any of these games, right? Because I think at this kind of point in the season, no one should really kind of be the team that they're going to be in May. Everyone is trying to figure stuff out at the moment, especially a team with a new manager. And I think you look at Chelsea's next few games after this last one, going against City, first game of the season is a tough one, but the next few games are pretty straightforward. They should be games where they're picking up a lot of points. But I have to be honest, right? Bar towards the end of the first half, I thought City were largely comfortable in this game. And even when Chelsea were kind of onto them, it never really felt like City were under too much pressure. It almost kind of always felt that no matter how this game went, City were going to find a solution to the game. If they needed to up the tempo, they would have. If they needed to get out of third gear, they did. And they were ready to pounce on any single mistake that Chelsea threw at them. Let's talk about a few individual performances, right? I'll start on City. They're the champions. And City, more so than anybody, I take the results at the start of the season with a pinch of salt. Because City, they grow into the year. They grow into the season. And even when it looks like they're starting off slow, they always click at crunch time. So no matter how this game went for City, you have to take it with a grain of salt, honestly. But there were a few performances that really impressed me. The goal scorer, Erling Haaland. Death taxes Erling Haaland scoring goals. If you are a betting man, I strongly advise you, put everything you got on Erling Haaland winning the Golden Boot for the 3rd year in a row. And this year, I expect him to have a season closer to the first than closer to his second. He looks like a man that heard all of the talk last season, all of the talk about his injuries and how good he really is, and he looks just as dead focused on proving the doubters wrong and destroying this league for a 3rd straight season as he ever has been before. The way he scored that goal, right? And how poetic that it was basically on Cucurella, who has had this song all summer long about how Haaland trembles around him. He babied Cucurella. Babied him. Cucurella was trying to win the ball off him in the box. Haaland barely had to even shove him off him. Easy. And that's not even a slight on Chelsea. Haaland is going to destroy every single team that goes up against him this year, bro. I expect Haaland again to score over 30 plus goals and again to probably look to break his own record that he's already set. The guy's the best goal scorer on the planet. I've said numerous times, I believe Erling Haaland would score 25 plus for Bournemouth. He's that good in terms of scoring goals. Incredible forward. He looks on it. He looks sharp. That's another thing, right? At times last season, you could kind of feel the sense of Haaland that maybe he was a little heavier, like he wasn't 100% match fit, and maybe he was being rushed from injury from time to time. He looked sharp and he looked light. That's a scary sight for the other 19 teams in the league. A fit, light, and confident Erling Haaland is a scary sight to every other team in the league. But that's Haaland. We know what he's about, right? The new kid, Savinho. Whew! Savinho's a problem. Savinho's a real problem. I know Demba Ba tweeted at halftime, when did Mahrez rejoin Manchester City? I won't go as far as saying it's the exact player as Mahrez, even though their movements at times are a bit similar. Savinho is a dangerous player. I don't know if he wants to go by Savio or now his new kit name is Savinho, but this is a real Brazilian winger. Don't get it twisted. This kid plays like a Brazilian. And it's actually startling for me how young he is. And I expect him fully to be one of the breakthrough stars of the Premier League this season. Had very good spell of Girona last year. And he looks ready to kind of be the next piece in this Manchester City attack. And I like him as well too, because you don't see this very often from the modern day winger. He plays on either side. He'll play on the left. He'll switch midway onto the right, and he'll hurt the fullback just as badly on either flank. You used to get that a lot during the 2000s, right? Cristiano, he played on the left and the right. Robben, he even had a stint on the left and then played on the right. This was a thing that you often saw from wingers. These days, you typically have like specialist wingers, right? Oh, I'm left-footed, so I want to play on the right and just cut in. Oh, I'm left-footed and I want to play on the right and just cut in. Or like, I want to play on my dominant side. But I especially the young players who really haven't proven anything. Earn your stripes. It's a part of the reason why I like Garnacho as well, too. He doesn't mind playing on the right. And I like the fact that Savinho can hurt you on the left and the right. His cameo in the first half was very, very, very sharp, man. Very, very, very sharp. So very impressive from him. Rico Lewis, I think, is somebody who's kind of gone under the radar at City because you have Foden, because you have Oscar Bob emerging, and he's also not like the biggest name. But Rico Lewis is a very, very intelligent player. And he's a player that if you want an example of a guy that has spawned from the City Academy, and he's a City Academy graduate, that's Rico Lewis, bro. Fundamentally excellent. Footballing IQ, very, very good. And he just knows how to play the game of football, and he knows how to play in the City system. I think he's becoming criminally underrated. And a guy that can play in numerous different positions. He can play at right back. He can invert into midfield, pop up in attacking positions. Just a very smart player that I think will have a real impact for Manchester City this year. I think a few seasons ago was really his emergence, and last season you kind of saw him more as a bit part player, but I think he has a real part to play for City this year, man. Another really impressive performance. And then for me, my man of the match, personally, was Mateo Kovacic. Kovacic is a weird one, right? Because he has so much ability. For me, when you talk about press-resistant players in the league, Kovacic is right up there. You give him the ball in those midfield positions, and he can almost pivot his way out of pressure every single time effortlessly. It's so difficult to get the ball off him. He has this ability to kind of like hunch over and just weave his way through players. He's always had that ability as well too at Inter, at Real Madrid, and at Chelsea, at Manchester City. No one can ever doubt Mateo Kovacic's ability to be unbelievable under pressure in the first phase. He's so good with it. But I think the one thing that's always been a little annoying with Kovacic is like, yes, he's a wonderfully technical player. Again, unbelievable under the press. A strong guy for his size. But that final pass has always been lacking from Kovacic. The end product. He's good in the first two phases. In the third phase, he typically doesn't have anything to his game. Except for maybe one moment a season where he pops up with a screamer. And unfortunately for Chelsea, that moment, that game, happened against them on the first day of the season. He was deputizing for Rodri, who's really been given an extensive amount of time off from Manchester City, right? They know how much he played last year, going into the Euros as well too, playing so many minutes for Spain. The load on his shoulders has been so much, and he, more so than maybe any player on the planet, deserves this time off. But Kovacic has kind of taken over that role. Wrong with that kid, Nick O'Reilly, right? But Kovacic was entrusted to be the deputy to Rodri at defensive midfield this year. The first game, he, for me, was City's best player. I thought he was so comfortable in midfield. And to pivot into the other team, I think it's very, very damning that he looked so comfortable against a team that replaced him almost like without even blinking with basically over 200 million pounds worth of talent. Let's talk about Chelsea. Caicedo and Enzo. This is their second season together. Enzo, it's his second year, but he's been here for basically like he came before Caicedo, right? The amount of money that Chelsea have spent replacing the likes of Jorginho, Kovacic, Mason Mount, now Conor Gallagher as well too, and how much money that they've invested in particular, Enzo and Caicedo. I'm going to offend a lot of people here, but I'm sorry, I don't really care. They haven't really upgraded that much in midfield, chat. Maybe in terms of name, in terms of potential, in terms of excitement, in terms of big money, they've upgraded. But in terms of what these guys on the pitch have actually produced and given you, Chelsea haven't really upgraded in midfield. That's my opinion. And in fact, today, there was one teenager along with them, and he outclassed them today. Romeo Lavia, playing against his former side, was much better than Enzo and Caicedo today. Much better. And he cost less than half than both of them. Lavia was very, very good today. And in fact, I think Enzo is extremely fortunate that it was Lavia that came off and not Enzo Fernandez today. Because on evidence of the performances, Lavia was the better player. But for me, Caicedo and Enzo, right? And more so Enzo. Caicedo, look, let me give you guys my thoughts on Caicedo. I thought he was a good player at Brighton, and you guys can check my Twitter, you can check my thoughts on him. It's always been consistent. I think he was a good player that, in my opinion, the hype just reached astronomical levels. In my opinion, he is never a 115 million pound player. At his best, he's a very functional midfielder that will improve Chelsea. At his best, he's a good midfielder. You want him on your team. But the money they spent, it's not value for money, in my opinion. He's not a 115 million kind of player. And he had his flashes last season, but for me, again, I don't think he's massively improved Chelsea in midfield. That's just kind of the way I view it. And in Enzo Fernandez, right, it's startling how much he's kind of declined from that period at Benfica and at the World Cup of Argentina. This is a shadow that we've seen in the last few seasons of that player that Chelsea bought, because there's no doubt he was a very good player. But I'm sorry, the amount of times he's replicated that level of performance, and again, validated the value for money which they spent on him, you can probably count on two hands. It hasn't been anywhere near good enough from Enzo. And I don't care. Any kind of Chelsea fan that wants to defend their team, I hear it. Go defend your team. But let's be realistic here, right? Let's call a spade a spade. Let's be honest with what our eyes are telling us. Enzo has not lived up to the price tag. And giving him the captaincy today was a big call for a variety of reasons. But if we stick to just purely on the pitch, giving Enzo the captaincy after really what he's produced for Chelsea over these last few years is a massive sign of confidence from the ownership and from Maresca that, look, we know it hasn't been great for you, but we believe in you as a player and we believe in you as a leader. And especially with this added responsibility, we hope it elevates your performances. Kind of what happened to Van Dijk at Liverpool, right? He kind of came off that shaky season when they came fifth. What did Klopp do when Henderson left? We're going to give you the captaincy. And Van Dijk almost grew with that added pressure and responsibility. Same with Trent. They gave him the vice captaincy, and his performances grew with that added responsibility. Some players, when you give them that captaincy, when you give them that responsibility, they grow with it. That, I think, is what Chelsea are trying to do by giving the Enzo the captaincy when Reece James is out. But I'm sorry, the performances have to be there. And today, how do I say this without being disrespectful? I thought Enzo was a disgrace today, honestly. For how much he costs, the performance that Enzo Fernandez gave you on the pitch today at number 10 where he was initially playing. Then he dropped deeper into a number 8. Then when Lavia came off, he came deeper then. He was average in all three. And I think it's damning that Kovacic, the guy that they literally replaced with Enzo and Caicedo, was as comfortable as he was today. I think that's a real disgrace, bro. And Caicedo and Enzo, there's no doubting that they're good players there. Maybe not 115 million pound players, but that's the price tag. Forget about it. They're still good players. It has to be a lot better. And this season, I'm sorry, the excuses are out the way. For everybody at Chelsea Football Club, they're out the way. But those two in particular, they have to be the leaders of this team. They're the marquee signings. They're the guys that Chelsea have invested over 200 million on combined to anchor the midfield and against the best teams, dominate games. And it's yet another performance today. We saw it last year at Old Trafford. I watched Amrabat school both of them. He is not half the player that those two are. And today, I saw Kovacic have the most comfortable game of his life against those two. It's not good enough, bro. It's not good enough. And it's not personal. It's not personal whatsoever. I got nothing against Enzo. I got nothing against Caicedo. Even though I don't think Caicedo is worth that money, I still think he's a good player. And even though I don't think Enzo has lived up to the price tag, I still think he's a good player there. But the performances are not matching up to how much you spent on them. Nowhere near it. And if I look at the rest of the team, right? I thought there were some really good performances from Chelsea. It's not all doom and gloom. First of all, it's the first game of the season. It's Enzo Maresca's first game of the season. And as I said about the United game, this part of the season is all about results. The team will grow. This is not the final vision of what Enzo Maresca's Chelsea looks like. So you can't take too much from this performance. I expect it to get better. And like I said, the fixtures that they have coming up, it's good opportunity to get points on the board and get the team up to scratch. Neto, we saw him for the last 30 minutes. You can tell he hasn't been with the team much. Has to be better from him. I thought Fofana was really, really good today. I hope he can stay fit because I think people are starting to forget that this was a guy that at one point was considered an 80 million pound prospect. At one point, it was him and Saliba at Saint-Etienne. He's a very good center back prospect. It's about getting himself back into full fitness and keeping him on the pitch. I thought he was pretty good today. Lavia, I spoke about him. I thought he was pretty good today. I thought the rest of them, to be honest, were varying between meh to okay, to be honest with you. I thought it was an okay performance from Chelsea. I didn't think they were particularly bad, but genuinely, I don't think they did enough to really disrupt City. I felt City were so comfortable today, man. I thought they were so comfortable. Nico Jackson had a few good flicks. He had a few good touches. And I think there was this one chance he had in the second half, right? Where like the ball is kind of coming to him. It was a mistake and he like flicked it. And I even said it was like a Demba Ba-esque finish, or in terms of how he tried to finish. It was creative. And it's a tough finish, right? It's very difficult to kind of score that. But I have to be honest with Nico Jackson. I don't see it with him at this moment. I think if Nico Jackson is leading your line up front for Chelsea at this current moment in his career, I think you're struggling really to do big things this season. I think so. Because yes, there's a lot of promise with him. Technically, he's actually quite good. Physically, he's quite the player. But let's face it, bro. No one feels comfortable seeing Nico Jackson in front of goal. No one sees Nico Jackson having to do the last action. His game's not there yet. He's still extremely raw. And it's part of the reason why I really think if they're able to sign Victor Osimhen, that's a type of signing. That's the caliber of player that should be leading Chelsea's line. No disrespect to Nico Jackson, but he's not there yet. And if he's the guy that you're relying on over a 38-game season to be the guy for Chelsea, I think you're struggling to succeed. I don't know what success looks like for Chelsea, but I think you're struggling to get it. And Nkunku's a weird one because I don't understand where he's going to fit into this Chelsea team, especially if they're getting, what's his name, Joao Felix. Because I think they're different players, but they like to occupy the same area of the pitch, that little left-hand pocket. How do you fit both of them into your team? One thing's for sure, neither of them are wingers. And Nkunku is not a left-sided player. He doesn't really have the explosive. He's a player that really likes occupying the spaces behind a striker. You saw it at Leipzig. You saw it even for the French team. That's really where he likes to operate. I don't see it as like a left-sided winger. That's not his game. And I thought today, he's a player for me. If you watch the whole game, you can be forgiven for not even noticing Nkunku was there. I thought he was very quiet. And Cole Palmer as well, too. I wasn't really impressed. Obviously, Cole Palmer is the guy on this team. He proved his credentials last season. But it was a quiet game from Cole Palmer. I thought from the entire Chelsea front three, again, there were moments, but I thought City defensively, when they needed to take care of business, they cleared the danger. And Chelsea's best opportunities really came from Ederson almost showing up to this game high. So I think there's a lot to look at with this Chelsea team. I don't think they found the balance yet. I don't think Maresca is 100% confident on what his best front three is. We'll see how that kind of shapes up once Neto is in the team, once Joao Felix apparently comes in, if they're able to get Osimhen over the line. But I think right now with Chelsea, and it's the reason why I had them finishing like 6th in my preseason prediction, there's more questions than answers with them. And it's a long season. There's a lot of time to find those answers. But at this current moment, I think Maresca has more questions about his team than he does answers. And for me, look, it's a tough game. I'm not going to be too harsh on everybody, bar those two midfielders, because for me, they have no excuses this year. But for the rest of the team and for Maresca, there's a lot of time to kind of figure out these questions that they do have. And there's a lot of time to gel the team in the image that he kind of wants it in. The question of Chelsea is, will they finally offer him that time to do it? Ironically, only time will tell.